just don't know where I can go. Fun's getting low. Winter is a coming fast and colder than the last. Pity for me, cold as can be. When breezes blow with ice and snow, no wonder then I sing time and again.
Welcome to Sparky on Ice, the coldest podcast on the internet. Today is Thursday, May 16th, 2019. This is episode 9, and I've been on ice for 121 days. Well, hello everyone. I'm now on a bi-weekly podcast schedule. The hope is that there will be enough happen in 2 weeks that I can have a longer and more informative show. And that certainly holds true for this episode. So I guess I'll just get right into it. I guess I should start with the weather for the last couple of weeks. For most of the time, it was rather warm. Warm meaning that it was above 10 degrees Fahrenheit. We hit 14 degrees a couple days in that, and I had begun dressing for colder weather and was overdressed for much of that time. Sweating is not suggested here as it tends to freeze and will make you even colder and sick, so that's not a good thing. But then it got cold and windy again, so all is well and winter is still here. Only 2 days after we hit 14, we got down to negative 10 and a wind chill of negative 37, made for quite an adjustment in body temperature regulation. We also got a little bit of snow in that time. The most interesting thing about snow here is how it drifts. If there's a solid object, it just piles up there. The ground can be scoured clean, but the doorway can have 3 feet of snow in front of it. Makes going to work in the morning quite an adventure. You sometimes have to shovel your way through a snowdrift just to get to the doors. I also got a tour of the NASA facility here. I found that really stimulating. I learned that we have one of the most active satellite tracking systems in the world. We track the polar satellites on every orbit it makes. And we are the only American station that can actually do this due to our location so far south. We see it every single time it passes over. Right now, they're tracking satellites that chart weather, take readings of ground moisture, and one that tracks gravity changes in the Earth. The last one is called Gravity Recovery and Climate Experiments Follow On, or GRACE-FO, which is an interesting way to call it. But it's really cool. And the primary purpose is tracking Earth's water movement to monitor changes in underground water storage, the amount of water in large lakes and rivers, soil moisture, ice sheets and glaciers, and sea level caused by the addition of water to the ocean. It's really cool. It does this by having 2 identical satellites on the exact same path. And the system tracks when the front one speeds up relative to the second one. Then it tracks how long until the second one catches up. This way they can see if there's underground aquifers are going empty because water is denser than air, and it changes the gravitational pull of the Earth in that spot. But the best part of the day is when we went up to the Gulf. It's actually a geodesic dome on Arrival Heights that houses the dish. But it was really windy up there, probably about 60 miles per hour. It was really hard to walk to the building from the van. And inside is the 12-foot dish. They had us stand in one spot while they pointed the dish directly at us. It was pointing up when we got there, and it tipped the air sitting in the dish dropped on us. It was at least 15 degrees colder than the ambient air temperature, which was already really, really cold. It also moves much faster than you think it would. Apparently, it has to follow satellite when it crosses over us at 30,000 miles an hour. And it takes 12 minutes to get from horizon to horizon. So this dish moves across our horizon, and it's really, really cool to watch. So you should probably look that up. I've also started going to social functions. Normally, I avoid the bar, except trivia night. I really enjoy going and hanging out with my friends there. And I'm making some more friends here, which is also a plus. We're not all that good, but we're getting better. The other issue I have with the bar here is the cider. We only have one kind of cider, and it's not that good. It's kiwi cider. Not made from kiwis from New Zealand. It's made from apples, but it's just not that great. But beggars can't be choosers, I guess. But the biggest news from the last couple of weeks was when our internet dropped last week. We rely on communication satellites to keep in touch with the rest of the world. We have one dish on our Black Island station, and it has an obsolete tracking system that finally broke down. Basically, it lost its ability to find the satellite, so it kept searching for the satellite, and it could never found it. We went 3 days without any off-continent communication, except for standalone sat phones. No internet, no phones, no email, no Facebook, nothing. And people were starting to get cranky. Seems odd that it may seem odd to some of the folks back home that only 3 days without it is such a big deal. But when you can't contact your family, or you can't check your bank account, or, you've got something going on at home you have to deal with and you can't, you get frustrated, right? I mean, there was no way to contact our family. The first day was okay. We had spotty internet, but by the end of the second day, it was completely gone. And the third day, there was nothing for the whole day. It wasn't until late on the third day that they got some internet. And then for the next 4 or 5 days, it was in and out while they got the satellite dish set. But the good news is they were able to set the dish so that we can get service pretty much all day now. And it's something like that really shows how isolated we are. One little failure can be a serious issue. And that was just the internet. You can imagine if, say, our generators went down, because our generators provide our electricity and our heat because of the way the system's designed. They use a glycol or an antifreeze substitutes in the pipes, and it's heated up by the generators and sent out to the buildings to do radiant heat, and then the electricity supplements it with electric heat and furnaces. And without those, it would be impossible. Back onto some history. The last time we ended right when the sealers and whalers were starting to come in. And sealers played a big role in the history of Antarctica. They've been seeking new hunting grounds with intact seal colonies and were eager explorers, but not inclined to share any new discoveries. So news of the new lands was sometimes held back for years. An exception was the London-based Enderby brothers, responsible for significant discoveries in the Southern Ocean from 1775 to the early 1850s, including the Auckland Islands in 1805. And in 1810, Frederick Hasselberg, a sealer operating out of Sydney, discovered Macquarie Island. 9 years later, an English sealer, William Smith, confirmed the existence of South Shetland Islands off the northern tip of the Antarctic Peninsula. And in November 1820, a U.S. sealer named Nathan Palmer may have been the first captain to sight Antarctic mainland. Financial success and notorious behavior of regulated sealer gangs sparked a growing public interest in southern parts, which in turn drew governments into the mix. Half a century after Cook's voyage, the next national expedition was organized by the Russian Navy under the command of one of its captains, Estonian-born Thaddeus von Bellingshausen. Like Cook, he circumnavigated the continent, penetrating south of the Antarctic Circle 6 times, discovering Peter I and Alexander Islands. If Palmer's sightings of Antarctica wasn't genuine, and there are doubts about his claim, then Bellinghausen almost certainly deserves that prize. In January of 1821, in the early 1820s, tens of thousands, perhaps millions of Antarctic seals were slaughtered, mainly for their oil and fur. But commercial ventures also made many discoveries. Records are unclear, but a party from a U.S. sealing vessel commanded by John Davis probably made the first landing on the Antarctic continent at Hughes Bay at the northern tip of the Antarctic Peninsula in February 1821. In 1823, London-based James Weddell led the most famous of all sealing voyages deep into the sea named after him, attaining the furthest south recorded that was not beaten for nearly a century. 2 epic Enderby brothers voyages exploring the East Antarctica were led by John Biscoe in 1831 and John Bellany in 1839. If Davis's crew didn't land in 1821, a New York-based whaler named Mercator Cooper led the first Antarctic landing on the Ross Sea coast in 1853, and it was a U.S. sealer, Erasmus Rogers, who made the first landing on Heard Island in 1855. The high point of ship-based national expedition was around 1840 when France, the United States, Great Britain each dispatched Antarctic expeditions. Frenchman Jules Sebastien César Dumont d'Urville was first, exploring the Antarctic Peninsula in 1838 and the Antarctic coast south of Hobart in 1840. Charles Wilkes led the first United States exploring expedition to the Antarctic Peninsula a year after Dumont, then undertook an extensive voyage along the coast of Antarctica south and southwest of Hobart. Royal Navy Captain James Clark Ross had already had experience in Arctic ice and was put in command of the party that left England in 1839. The most important discoveries were Antarctica, largest coastal seas, and its largest ice shelf, which were both named in his honor. He also discovered the Transantarctic Mountains and the active volcano of Mount Erebus before completing an Antarctic circumnavigation in 1843. So just as a side note on the history, McMurdo is on Ross Island, just below Mount Erebus, right in the middle of the Ross Sea and the Ross Sea ice shelf. So there you go. Continuing on with history. The decimation of seal populations saw a focus from the mid-1850s on a deep-sea whaling, a trade that saw the Scandinavians enter the Antarctic story for the first time. Norwegian whalers Carl Larsen, Henrik Bull, and Karsten, not even going to attempt his name, are remembered by posterity not for catching whales but exploring Antarctic waters, and in the last one's case by becoming the first to spend a winter ashore in Antarctica in 1899 at Camp Adair, south of New Zealand. All right, that's it for history this week. Next time, we're going to get into the heroic age of Antarctic exploration. And we get into the real nitty-gritty where we can really dig into some of the history and happenings of the early 19th century in Antarctica. That should be a lot of fun because we get to talk about Scott and Admonson, Shackleton. So it should be good. Well, it doesn't look like I have any questions this episode, so I guess that is all I have for you all. You can ask questions via email at podcast@sparkyonice.xyz. You can also look me up on Twitter and Facebook at Sparky on Ice. And as usual, I'll see you next time.
I feel the snow and sleet without a pair of winter shoes to warm my